So if you would be so kind, tell me your full name, where are you from, and how do you connect to this wonderful...
And I look at you.
Yes.
I'm Kathy Kelly. I'm from Chicago, and I introduced myself to this group as a frequent guest at Catholic worker houses. I'm fortunate to have been invited to come to a lot of these communities because these are people who, along with wanting to do more than anyone's fair share of taking care of other people, acts of hospitality, caring for people that a lot of other people maybe have wanted to forget about or reject. They also can't forget about the responsibilities to try and end wars in the time, multiple wars, to try to better understand and try to resist nonviolently. So people have invited me to come to their homes quite often.
Great. And where are you based at, Kathy?
I'm based out of Chicago. I'm with a group called Voices for Creative Nonviolence.
Speak up a little bit because there's a lot of chatter. So Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and what is that all about?
This is a group that stemmed from an effort to end the economic sanctions against Iraq. We broke those sanctions as often as we could. We were declared criminal by the U.S. government, and we saw the consequences of economic sanctions many, many times in delegation travel to Iraq. So we stayed in Iraq during the shock and awe bombing. And now as we see warfare spreading to Pakistan, as the war in Afghanistan escalates, as the United States military aid to Israel also is a concern that we simply can't ignore with the suffering that has been caused through that. We're trying to oppose these wars.
In which way do you do those things? How do you go about it? And which means and ways do you...
At this point, we're encouraging people strongly to go into their elected representatives' offices. You know, the Congress people, the senators, I think are perhaps not hearing from the general public pressure to extend or continue or escalate the war in Afghanistan. 58% of the United States public says they're against this war in Afghanistan. So our job now is to make sure that the elected representatives know exactly what we believe regarding the folly of these wars, and that they know what we want to see that money redirected toward. And then we encourage people to join in Washington, D.C. in front of the White House.
So is there civil disobedience involved with that?
Well, what we're encouraging is a 10-month campaign. We think at the outset it's a good idea to get to know the staffers that you're being directed to in the elected representatives' offices, to go in with the information, to, in a sense, help educate the local staffers who may not be so aware of what's happening in remote areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Then we want people to say to President Obama, look, after a year, with the State of the Union coming up as his chance to say where he sees the country going, with a new defense authorization spending bill that will be due February 2nd, prior to that date, we want people to go and do consecutive days of civil disobedience in front of the White House.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that'll be some...
Yeah. We will come back to the nonviolence and means, but there's obviously been a big shift in the White House, and how do you see that as compared to the recent history of, you know, the last presidency, and do you see more hope?
We certainly have a more thoughtful person in the Oval Office than President Obama, but he's still the world's chief arms weapons seller. He is still the person who is with the Joint Chiefs of Staff presiding over multiple wars, and we have a budget that's looking like it will be amounting to $3.2 trillion going toward wars that are causing destruction, antagonism toward the United States, a seething sense that this is a menace that has to be opposed amongst many people in other parts of the world.